Marcus had been at the company for 4 years. In those 4 years, he had never missed a deadline, he had never needed to be chased for an update, he had never caused friction in a meeting, never shown up unprepared, never been the reason a project slipped. He was the person problems quietly stopped existing around. Not because he made noise about solving them, because he solved them, said nothing, and moved on to the next thing. His manager, a director named Patricia, had 32 people in her orbit. She did not worry about the employees who weren't generating problems. Marcus wasn't generating problems. So for 3 years, Marcus wasn't on her radar. Then the company restructured. Patricia got a new VP above her. The VP was the kind of leader who wanted visibility into team dynamics, who used words like pulse and engagement signals, who expected managers to be able to speak fluently about every person on their team. Patricia started making rounds, casual check-ins. She would sit with people, ask what they were working on, what was frustrating them, what they were hoping for. And people told her. They vented a little, they shared a little, they gave her enough to build a picture. When she got to Marcus, he answered what she asked, politely, accurately, without volunteering anything beyond the question. She left that conversation with almost nothing, not because Marcus had been cold or difficult or uncooperative, simply because he had not opened a window she could see through. 3 weeks later, Marcus was assigned to a cross-functional task force. It had a serious name, it had no real budget, no meaningful deliverables, and no path to anything. It was, in organizational terms, the equivalent of being quietly placed somewhere out of the way. He had not underperformed, he had not created conflict, he had not done anything that would show up in a performance review as a problem. He had simply become, in the words no one would ever say to his face, an unknown variable in a system that had decided it could no longer afford unknowns. If you have ever been Marcus, or if you are Marcus right now, what I am about to tell you is exactly what happened and why, and it is not what you think. This is not a video about speaking up more in meetings. You have been told that. It hasn't moved anything because it is addressing the surface of a much deeper structural problem. This is about organizational psychology, about the specific, mechanical reasons why a manager who has nothing bad to say about you will still, quietly and systematically, work to minimize, contain, or move you. Not out of malice, out of a very particular kind of fear that they themselves cannot name. There are 3 layers to it. They run at the same time. Not one of them shows up on a performance review. And once you can see all 3, the quiet contempt behind 1,000 great fit for your skills conversations suddenly has a name.
Reason 1. When you stop talking, you remove your manager's early warning system, and that makes them their biggest hidden liability. Every manager is playing 2 games at once, the game they play with their team and the game they play with the leadership above them. And the most professionally dangerous thing that can happen to a manager is to be caught off guard, to have something surface above them that they did not see coming from below. Vocal employees protect managers from this. When someone complains, when someone expresses frustration, when someone signals that something is wrong, the manager gets advance notice. They can adjust. They can get ahead of the narrative. They can say, when the conversation reaches their VP, "Yes, I was aware of that. Here is how I handled it." That protection is invisible when it is working. It only becomes visible the moment it disappears. The quiet employee removes that protection completely. They don't vent, they don't signal, they don't give the manager any opportunity to get in front of whatever might be building. And because of this, the manager has no idea what is coming. Now sit with what that actually means from where the manager is sitting. One of their team members is, from their perspective, a sealed room. They could be completely satisfied. They could be drafting a resignation letter. They could be talking to HR. They could be having conversations with another department that would make this manager look uninformed if they surface without warning. The manager genuinely cannot tell because you have not given them access. And here is the critical piece. If something does surface later, if you leave suddenly, if you raise something formally, if you escalate something that makes your manager look like they did not have their finger on the pulse of their team, they will have no early warning to point to, no evidence that they had been monitoring the situation, no record of a conversation in which you raised something and they responded. Your silence doesn't just make you unreadable, It makes your manager exposed. It creates a gap in their management record that they cannot explain. And a manager who feels exposed around a specific person does not typically respond by trying harder to understand that person. They respond by reducing the exposure, by moving the variable they cannot account for to somewhere it can cause less damage to their position. Marcus wasn't a performance problem, he was a coverage problem. Patricia couldn't tell her VP that she had a handle on him because she didn't. And rather than admit that, the far easier solution was to move him somewhere where that gap wouldn't matter. Reason 2. When you stop talking, you stop needing them. And that is more destabilizing than anyone in management will admit. Here's something that almost no one in a professional context says directly. A significant part of what makes a manager feel secure in their role is the experience of being needed, being the person who unlocks access for their team, who provides recognition that fuels motivation, who gives direction that shapes trajectory, who serves as the bridge between the team and everything above. Managers who feel needed feel relevant, and relevance is not a small thing when your role exists specifically to manage people. The employee who talks, who shares ambitions, who expresses frustration, who asks for guidance, that employee is giving their manager a role to play. They're giving their manager the experience of influence, the ability to shape someone's engagement, their career path, their daily experience of work. The self-sufficient, quiet employee, the one who executes without needing external fuel, who never requires recognition to stay motivated, who never asks for direction because they've already figured it out, that employee has communicated something very specific without intending to. They've communicated, "I don't need you in the way the others do." Now, consciously, a manager might say that's the ideal. That's what we hire for. Autonomous people who don't need handholding. But that is not what gets processed at the level where discomfort lives. What gets processed is something like this. I do not know where this person's ceiling is. I cannot shape where they are going. I cannot take credit for their development because I haven't been part of it. I cannot point to my influence on their trajectory because they appear to be running entirely on their own internal engine. That is not a neutral feeling. For a certain kind of manager, that reads as a referendum on their usefulness. And rather than sit with that and examine it, it's far easier to conclude that there is something wrong with an employee who is this self-contained, that they are not a team player, that they are not invested, that they are not culturally aligned, a phrase that means almost nothing and can be applied to almost anyone a manager wants to contain. None of that conclusion has anything to do with your work. It has everything to do with your manager's unexamined relationship to their own relevance. But here's the reality. The organization does not adjudicate between those two things. It does not stop to ask whether the problem is with you or with your manager's need to feel needed. It simply moves in the direction of the manager's assessment, which means the structural consequence lands on you regardless of where the actual problem sits.
Reason 3. Your silence makes you unpredictable, and organizations are not built for unpredictable people. This one operates almost entirely below the surface, but it drives more quiet demotions, lateral moves, and invisible career ceilings than almost anything else. Organizations function on legibility, on the ability to model people, on knowing with reasonable confidence what someone is likely to do next, what they are likely to want, how they are likely to respond to a change in direction or a shift in priorities. This predictability is what allows leadership to plan, to assign people to projects, to structure teams, to build a mental map of who is going where. The employee who talks gives the organization this. Their patterns are visible, their ambitions are stated, their frustrations are on record. Even their resistance is manageable because it is predictable resistance. You know it is coming, you can account for it, work around it, incorporate it into your planning. The quiet employee breaks this, not intentionally, but they have never given the organization enough consistent signal to build a reliable model. They cannot be confidently assigned to a sensitive initiative because no one knows how they will respond if things go sideways. They cannot be considered for leadership because no one has seen how they move a room. They cannot be treated as a sure retention bet because they have never complained, but they have also never expressed investment. And here's the logic the organization follows from that. A person who cannot be modeled cannot be planned around. A person who cannot be planned around is, structurally speaking, a risk. Not because of anything they've done, because of everything that has not been accounted for. What the organization does with risks is not eliminate them, it contains them. It moves them to where the consequences of the unknown are smaller, where the blast radius, if something unpredictable happens, is manageable. Marcus got moved to that task force because Patricia could not write a confident narrative about him for anyone above her, and in the absence of a narrative, the organization supplied one of its own. Marcus is best used here where his work can be observed in a contained, low-stakes environment, away from decisions, away from influence, away from the center. The task force was not a punishment, it was a container, and he would have stayed in it indefinitely if he hadn't understood why he was there in the first place.
So here is what you do with this, and I want to be precise because the wrong answer to this problem makes things significantly worse. Move 1. Make yourself legible without making yourself loud. Legibility is not the same as volume. You do not need to talk more. You need to give the organization enough signal at the right moments to build an accurate picture of you, not the picture it is currently inventing. One sentence in a one-on-one that makes your actual thinking visible. One observation in a meeting that demonstrates you have been processing at a level the conversation had not yet reached. One question, not about your task list, but about the strategy, the direction, the problem underneath the stated problem that signals you are engaged at a depth people did not know to look for. Not a performance, a calibrated signal delivered when it matters. Quiet the rest of the time. Move 2. Give your manager something to say about you when you are not in the room. Your manager is in conversations you are never part of. They are asked to characterize their team. They're expected to speak fluently about who is doing what and where people are headed. If they have nothing accurate to say about you, they will say nothing or something inaccurate. Either result works against you. You can change this without campaigning for yourself. You can change it by giving your manager one clear, specific, memorable thing per quarter. Something about your thinking, your observations, your perspective on where the team's work is heading. Something they can point to when someone above them asks. A manager who has something impressive and accurate to say about you becomes your advocate in rooms you never enter. A manager who has nothing defaults to describing you as solid but vague. Solid but vague does not get elevated. It gets maintained exactly where it is. Move 3. Make your silence read as precision, not absence. There is a version of quiet that reads as depth, and there is a version that reads as disengagement. The difference is almost entirely in the signals that surround the silence. The person who speaks rarely but always reframes the conversation when they do. The person who is visibly listening in a way that others are not. The person whose few contributions tend to land with more weight than the contributions of people who spoke 10 times before them. That person's silence reads as a deliberate choice, a high signal choice. The person who says very little and gives no other evidence of what is happening inside, that person's silence reads as absence regardless of the quality of the processing actually occurring. You are not changing who you are. You are making the quality of your attention visible at the moments when it matters most. That is the only adjustment required.
Marcus figured out what had happened to him. Not immediately. It took time and a conversation with someone who had watched the same dynamics from a different angle. Once he understood it, he did not start performing. He did not become someone who filled every silence with speech. He became deliberate about the moments when he broke his silence and precise about what he said when he did. He started giving Patricia one specific, well-framed insight per conversation, not as a career move, but as a window. He started asking questions in meetings that showed he was thinking at a layer below the discussion everyone else was having. Within a year, he was off the task force and running a function of his own, not because he got louder, but because someone could finally describe him accurately in a room he wasn't in. He had not changed. The organization's ability to see him had changed, and that was the only change that was ever necessary. Your silence was never the problem. The problem was that you left it unframed, and an organization will always write its own caption under a blank space. Frame it yourself. Do that, and the same quality that once made you a variable to contain becomes the reason they fight to keep you close. The system did not change for Marcus. Marcus learned how to make the system legible to itself using the very capabilities it had been trying to move out of the way. You do not need to become louder. You need to become deliberate. Learn the difference before another quarter passes and the wrong narrative finishes writing itself about you. If this hit you, share it with one person whose name just came to mind. Not a group, one specific person who needed to hear this. Because this kind of clarity doesn't work when only you have it. See you in the next one.